Tuesday in a case with major First Amendment implications. We'll discuss this and more in today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Tessa Barretta. As Texas cities stare down budget deficits, what services could be on the chopping block? The Texas Tribune will join us to explain.
Plus, could reflecting a small fraction of sunlight help slow global warming? And who decides if this research moves forward? The University of Houston argues that regulation, not prohibition, is the smarter path.
As always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870. You can email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. It was a mixed bag for progressive candidates in Florida's primary races last night. Multiple candidates lost their primaries in some key House races. However, there was a surprise win for the left in the state's Senate contest. Here's NPR's Ashley Lopez.
Florida State Representative Angie Nixon ran for the Democratic Party's Senate nomination on a platform of Medicare for All and universal child care. And she defeated Alex Vindman, a national figure during President Trump's first impeachment trial, who drastically outraised Nixon. She now faces a tough race in a state that has become reliably conservative. In House contests, Oliver Larkin, who was backed by the Democratic Socialists of America, lost his challenge to Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a long-serving Congresswoman, won her primary. She beat a slate of black candidates, which included a progressive candidate for a seat that had long been held by a black representative. Ashley Lopez, NPR News.
The U.S. gave Canada a 3-day reprieve from new hefty tariffs, 50% levies on $20 billion worth of Canadian goods, from building materials to dairy products. NPR's Emily Fang says President Trump had announced that both sides had reached an agreement just hours before the tariffs were due to take effect.
The deadline for these tariffs was supposed to kick in midnight last night, but with less than 2 hours to go before that deadline, Trump announced he was temporarily calling them off. And he wrote on Truth Social what was key behind this deal was the potential to restart the Keystone Pipeline, a joint project between U.S. and Canadian companies to deliver oil from Canada to the U.S., but it got mired in an environmental controversy, and its permit was ultimately revoked by President Biden through an executive order. Trump rolled back that executive order last year as part of his push to expand the U.S.'s oil and gas sector.
That's NPR's Emily Fang reporting. The Israeli military has announced rare criminal investigations into 2 high-profile attacks during the Gaza war. One is the killing of a 5-year-old Palestinian girl. A film about her death was nominated for an Academy Award. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv.
The film is called The Voice of Hind Rajab. She was the sole survivor of her family, who was killed by Israeli fire as they fled Gaza City. She called Palestinian paramedics for help in this recorded call. As the paramedics tried to rescue her, they too were killed by Israeli fire. Later, the girl's body was found. Now, more than 2 years later, the Israeli military announced a criminal investigation into that incident and into last year's killing of 15 Palestinian rescue workers in a single attack. Soldiers crushed their vehicles and buried the dead in a mass grave. Israel says it will not open criminal probes into 3 other attacks that killed aid workers from World Central Kitchen and Doctors Without Borders. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Shelby Rose. All rental units in Houston may soon be required to have air conditioning. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports some city council members want to close the loophole that allows landlords to not install AC.
Under city code, housing units must be no hotter than 80 degrees, or, if the high is above 100, 20 degrees below the outside temperature. If approved by the City Council this week, the right to air conditioning ordinance would take effect in 90 days, removing the window screen loophole. Julia Orduña with advocacy group Texas Housers supports the move.
Everyone should have access to live in healthy and cooled housing, especially when we're dealing with 100, 105, 110 heat indexes.
A 2023 survey by the U.S. Census Bureau found more than 20,000 households in the Houston metro area did not have air conditioning. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
Fort Bend ISD is asking families to weigh in on a proposed boundary changes that would impact where students attend several middle and high schools starting next year. At least 9 middle schools in the district could see changes, and officials say 3 high schools they're focusing on are over capacity: Stephen F. Austin, Elkins, and Travis. Beth Martinez is the deputy superintendent.
We have multiple splits as we stand now, where students go to an elementary and then they split to multiple middle schools, or a middle school splits to multiple high schools. So the focus of this work was to look at how we could relieve those 3 high schools and how we could best align those feeder patterns to keep the splits at minimum.
Parents can access the online survey on Fort Bend ISD's website. The school board is expected to vote on the boundary changes by October. Minnesota's Attorney General is suing Governor Abbott for failing to send an ICE agent back to Minnesota to face charges. 52-year-old Kristen Castro was arrested in Texas for shooting through a door and injuring a man during an immigration crackdown in Minneapolis. Abbott has not signed the warrant needed to extradite, sparking the lawsuit by Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison. I'm Shelby Rose, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include United States Postal Service, dedicated to putting reliability at the core of USPS Ground Advantage to help businesses operate smoothly. More at USPS.com/Ground Advantage.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now your hosts for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous and Tessa Barrera.
Happy Wednesday.
Hump day.
Hump day. I always pause when I say the day because I'm always confused.
Just make sure.
Yeah, we're midway through the week. This has been a slow week for me. How
It's
about
been
for you?
slow. Are you kidding me? It's flying by. Third time. This is our 3rd official show together.
Well,
Where are my flowers? I'm just kidding. I'm just
I
kidding.
did see that I saw a note online, not that I was stalking you, that back when you started a different job, that the other host actually gave you flowers, I guess, early on or something.
Oh, yeah, probably.
And I didn't do anything for you.
And I loved it. And it was perfect.
That I didn't do anything, or that someone else gave you flowers?
No, that you didn't do anything. Give me some time. Let me prove myself. I told people, because, we had cake after the first show. Everyone was saying all these nice things. And I'm like, guys, I'm not going to be able to fit in the door. My head's going to be too big. Give me a moment here. But it's...
yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm waiting to see if you
You're playing it. You're playing it cool.
Yeah,
you're playing it cool.
Yeah.
Make me earn it, Ernie. Earn it, Ernie.
It's actually, I'm just lazy and I forget a lot of things. Let's be honest here. No slight. I'm so thrilled you're here, though. I will tell you, you don't know about this. On Wednesdays, we always do a question on our chat over in our YouTube group, which is the Would You Rather Wednesday.
I think I already answered it.
You already went to it, did it?
Is it involving a flip phone? Can you read it?
It is. I will tell you, and this is for everyone. Go to YouTube. In our chat group, you'll see our Wednesday Would You Rather question.
Okay.
Today's Would You Rather is, would you rather only use a flip phone or only watch black and white TV?
Only use a flip phone, for sure. I want to go back to the flip phone. I do. I don't like all the apps. I don't like I have to use a phone to get into my apartment. The phone...
Yeah, but if you didn't have it, you couldn't get in your apartment.
No, I would just have a key. I would just have, something old school.
I'm wondering, could I still have a handheld? Do you remember?
What about a pin
you're
pad?
way
I could
too
have a
young
pin
to
pad.
remember this. Do you remember when they first started coming out with, they were like smartphones, except they weren't phones. They were just little pocket-sized computers that were like it. You would have little icons on it. You could do things and all, but it wasn't a phone.
So not an iPad?
It may have been like an iPad mini.
Like an iPhone. Yeah,
maybe?
something like that.
See, if I could have one of those with me and a flip phone, I'd be fine with a flip phone. But to lose all my world access.
I saw a vlogger saying that she does her smartphone. She has a iPhone for the week because she needs to do her work on it, Teams, Outlook, whatever she needs to do. And then on the weekend, she goes to a flip phone. So she's not on social media all weekend. On the weekend, she's totally, you want to reach me, give me a proper call. And I think you can still text on a flip phone. Yeah. T9, I believe.
Well, or black and white TV. Now,
No.
I always have a TV on
No.
when I go to sleep. I need that to knock me out.
Really?
Yeah. And in my old, many, many moons ago in Chicago, I had a color TV in my bedroom, but it was an old color TV and it had kind of shifted color. So I didn't have a black and white. I kind of had a purple and yellow TV.
Okay.
And so it was programs, but they all had this light purple hue to them.
No.
But it was really great. And I didn't realize it until I had a normal TV in my bedroom again. That purple was very soothing. I'm always trying to reset the colors on my color TV in my bedroom to go back to a purple palette.
That's your comfort hue?
That's my comfort hue.
Okay.
Just lulls
I
me
I
out.
do no TVs in the bedroom.
No oh, are you one of those?
I force myself. I have a book by my bedside. I'm like, you want to relax, wind down? Okay, no more. Because I love falling asleep watching TV on the couch, but I try to make
I'm a
it so.
FOMO guy, and I will be dead tired, like eyes barely open. It's like one more YouTube video to watch.
Especially, okay, I can't wait for Thursday Obsessions tomorrow, current obsessions, because there's some stuff that I stayed up way too late watching, and I can't wait to share that with you.
All right, but if you want to vote on our would you rather only use a flip phone or only watch black and white TV? I haven't voted yet. I got to think on this one a little bit.
Okay.
While I'm thinking on it, we've got a great show coming up for you today. We got a lot we're talking about. Yesterday were some more primaries. You would think that those were over by now, but they're not. But it brings back into attention the importance of voting and what challenges we're facing heading into the midterms. A lot of changes, a lot of alterations, a lot of concerns around how voting will be handled. We're going to be talking with Democracy Docket about that coming up on the show. Also, that sunlight is bright out there. What if we could push some of it back towards space to kind of keep us from global warming and a whole bunch of things? But who decides if that's something we do? We're going to be talking about that coming up. The budget time
to
city, county,
balance the budget.
statewide. Well, we're going to be talking about what some of the issues are facing that. And then a wonderful recognition of the artwork of John Biggers. We'll be talking about that later in the show. But we always like to start off with the headlines of the day. Tessa, take us in.
The ABC network sued the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. This happened in federal court yesterday in a case with major First Amendment implications, arguing that the Trump administration has violated its free speech rights by launching investigations and challenging its broadcast licenses in retaliation for its news coverage, late night satire, and views on talk shows. ABC and its corporate parent, the Walt Disney Company, allege that the FCC has taken these actions to appease President Trump, who has repeatedly called for the network to be stripped of its licenses in response to material which has sparked his ire. The network's lawsuit cites Trump's own social media posts, which condemn ABC's news coverage, its talk show The View, and late night comedian Jimmy Kimmel, who has frequently mocked the president. The lawsuit starts, "Government censorship is deeply un-American." It goes on to note that in the words of a recent unanimous U.S. Supreme Court decision involving the National Rifle Association, the government may not use the power of the state to punish or suppress disfavored expression. Oh, I know I have thoughts on this. I know Ernie does too. If you do, call or text us 713-440-8870. I'll let you start.
The airwaves belong to all of us. They do not belong to the government. They are not a tool of the government. The government simply regulates it for the understanding that everyone has access to them and that we broadcast responsibly, not to limit editorial control of what we put out there. And so, of course, I am very much opposed to what this administration has been doing and how they have approached it and challenging licenses. It'd be different if it was government-run organization, a government broadcasting entity, and they want to control what they put out on their government broadcast because they are looking at it from a government policy point of view. That's something different. These are the airwaves that belong to all of us. Another part of it is, though, in today's day and age, it's becoming moot because we have online stream. We can get messages out in all different ways, and so people can find new ways. But in this last gasp of keeping broadcast entities alive, the government's got to back off it.
I agree. And I think that this administration has long been trying to strong arm media companies. And that's not cool. I think it's about time that someone push back. And it's going to take a big conglomerate, a big corporation to say, hey, guys, you can't do that. You can't tell media you need to bend the knee to us and our beliefs, or else we are going to cancel you. And listen, I'm not a huge Jimmy Kimmel fan, but when they fired him for whatever he was doing that the president didn't like, I and many other people canceled my Hulu subscription. And I think that ABC is finally growing a pair. And I think they are finally saying, okay, you know what? You hit us in our pocketbook, and now we have to fire back. So that is just a reminder. The power is with the people. They're not doing this because it's going to be a fun battle versus the administration. They're doing it because people finally said enough is enough, and you cannot bully. You cannot bully people who are just giving their opinion.
I am fascinated to see ABC and, of course, Walt Disney pushing back on it. Because as we've seen over with what's going on at CBS, they seem to be, okay, we don't want to cause any trouble. We'll do what you want. We'll give you what you want. But to see ABC stepping up, I'm very excited about this, and I'm very curious to see what the courts are going to say about it.
Yeah, well,
I want to see where it's going to go.
Again, I don't feel like they're doing it because it's a moral battle that they want to win.
It's a money battle.
They did it because people were hurting them. You don't hurt a corporation's feelings.
Right.
You hurt their bottom line. And that's what moves the needle, in my opinion.
You do hope, though, that there are moral positions and responsibilities that a corporation can. You hope. I don't believe it in real life.
I think that's the future. I think that's the future when people get fed up enough and corporations finally say, okay, we gotta have better business practices. But that is a utopia. I mean, hopefully closer than further away.
Yeah.
I mean, hope's a strong thing.
Yeah.
Isn't hope a strong thing?
713-440-8870. What do you think about this? Let us know. You mentioned Jimmy Kimmel. I can't help but mention Rosie O'Donnell. Have you been watching?
Rosie O'Donnell has been coming up on, so I get a lot of my news on TikTok, which also I believe is heavily regulated now, ever since it was sold back to the United States. But no, update me on her.
So Jimmy Kimmel's on his summer vacation, as he takes every year. And so Rosie O'Donnell is filling in for him.
I see.
And so she's done her monologue the last 2 nights. I think people were expecting more of a firebrand coming out, going after the president. She's made a few little comments, little digs. Okay. I wonder if it's going to build over the week, but it's interesting to see. She was making reference to the fact she knows he's watching, and she's talked a little about her kids and their reactions to it. She talked about her time in Ireland and having moved there to leave the U.S., but it's been interesting to see her on, and I was curious, and I haven't been following as closely if the president has or has not been reacting to the fact that she's on TV right now.
Yeah,
but
I haven't
he
checked
usually gets worked up over those things.
I haven't refreshed Truth Social in a while, I'll be honest. But, you know, Rosie O'Donnell, I think, is one of these people who she's very talented, has been in media for all of my life. And I mean, she has the means to relocate and go to another country and raise her children somewhere where she thinks is more ethical and up to her standards. But a lot of us, I mean, speak on it, speak up for the people who can't.
Yep.
Okay. You want to?
All right. We will move on, but we're also always interested in your thoughts on it. Have you been watching? Do you still watch broadcast television? Does this concern you, what the Trump administration is doing? Does it surprise you that ABC and Disney have pushed back? How do you think it's all going to turn out? We're curious. 713-440-8870. Mike from Cyprus is on the line. Mike, what do you think?
Very simple question. I'm puzzled by the journalists and news reporters or what have you that fancy themselves as, speakers of truth to power. And yet I see at Trump's press conferences and what have you, that he literally insults the women reporters and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And there's not a single reporter there that say, stop insulting them. They're just doing their job. And most importantly, the women who have fought their way to the positions that they're in, just basically stand there and take it. I don't understand that. And where is this, the power of the press and this, when they basically, when it comes chance for them to stand up, they shrink away.
Yeah. Mike, interesting point. I'm curious. Tessa, what do you think about what Mike brings up?
Well, I think that women have to be smart in the way that they fight back. I think women know always that if you go toe to toe with a man with a huge ego, I know in a lot of ways they want to make a public mockery out of you, and they will fight dirtier than dirty. So I think that women have to almost play the game, even though it's not a fair one. And they have to bide their time in a way. And, I can't imagine the work it would take to get a career where you have access to the White House. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to play the game in order to get to the bottom of it. I think there's a bigger issue at hand. And, it's awful. I know what he's talking about. And I think Trump has shown us just the value that he places on women, overall.
Mike, thank you for calling. It's interesting. I forget the name of the reporter that was just attacked by Trump, the female reporter, but I think to Caitlin Collins, who has repeatedly gotten the ire of the president, things like, why don't you smile more? And you could say, well, that's not insult. He's just saying smile more. But it's demeaning the way it's done. But I think she, like you're talking about, has handled it so well. She stands there, he says what he says, and she repeats her question. She doesn't get into the fray with him. And he'd
because it's a trap. Because it's a trap.
He would love it for her to come back at him with it. And she doesn't. And even when she's on interview programs talking about it, she keeps very solid. I worked many, many, many years ago in Chicago with an anchor who went on to 60 Minutes too and has worked at PBS, Carol Maureen. And she always handled everything very serious, very straight. And she was like, you know what? You have a responsibility to cover the news, and that's what's important to do. And you leave your personal life out of it. And if they attack you, it's not about you. You continue to do your work and report. 713-440-8870. We have Dwight from Northeast Houston on the line. Dwight, what are you thinking?
Well, thank you for taking my call, and I think you guys do a very good job. My thing is that if you can't take it, don't put it out there. Mm-hmm. And you must understand that Jimmy Kimmel, that's show business. And you cannot take the highest office of this country and use it to get involved with showbiz. And I think there's more important things that's going on in this country that need to be addressed rather than what a talk show host says in show business. Government shouldn't even involve themselves in that type of activity. That's my thought.
I mean, I agree with you on that note. Like, until we beat poverty and the housing crisis and the budget deficit, why are you concerning yourself with what an entertainer has to say that he doesn't like your policies? I mean, I totally agree with this caller.
Yeah. Dwight, thank you for calling and sharing. It reminds me, Pete Hegseth has been out campaigning as we were heading into these primaries last night. And there was a lot of talk about, we're in a military action right now in a part of the world that's extremely serious what this could evolve into. Why is he there doing that instead of focusing on his job? And it's the same thing that I see with the president. He is so wrapped up in these smaller battles of things when our economy looks like it's having a hard time of it, when people are feeling oppressed and all of that. And yet he's more worried about what Jimmy Kimmel says about how he looks. 713-440-8870. Hector from downtown is online. Hector, what are you thinking?
I like your lady companion there. She said
I like her too.
Them. Well, she put it out plain as day.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not America anymore. This is censorship to the highest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't criticize the president Obama was criticized. He just smiled, turned around, and walked away. But not Trump. I mean, you can't say anything bad about him because, he'll want to send ICE after you. You might get killed.
Hector, Hector, I thank you for your call and thank you for your compliment. And yeah, I think we're living in the upside down when this is the job of the media. Well, opinion-based media, and writers are going to have opinions. And you have to know, I mean, my mom told me a long time, listen, you'll never please everybody, so just do what you have to do. Mm-hmm. If the president was intent on doing his job, this would be, this is small, what do they call it?
Small potatoes?
Small potatoes. And it is National Potato Day, by the way.
And both Tessa and I like a good-sized baked potato, not a small tomato. Hector, thank you for calling and sharing. Wine Goddess Texas wrote, I don't believe the women Trump berates are just taking it. From what I've seen, they simply refuse to be derailed by it, and they keep asking the follow-up questions. We're going to get one more call in here. This is Ian from Katy. Ian, what's on your mind?
Yes. So, for one thing, I'm glad that ABC is finally standing up for themselves. It's just that it should never have gotten this far with ABC, CBS. I understand that they're beholden to their parent companies, Disney and Paramount holders. It's just that they decided to settle lawsuits that they could have easily won when Trump was.
Ian, you're breaking up a little bit on us there, but yes, I hear what you're saying, and I thank you for calling and sharing that. As always, we're interested in what you think. Regardless of where you fall on these issues, share with us at 713-440-8870 or drop us an email at talk@hellohouston.org.
Now, coming up on Hello Houston, we're going to talk with Joshua Fechter. He's the urban affairs reporter for the Texas Tribune. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Meet Tio Choco. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. This is his story. Visit ridemetro.org/Choco to find out where is Choco.
From Stacy Pettyjohn, Director of the Defense Program at the Center for a New American Security. Join us.
You can listen to Fresh Air. It's coming up tonight at 8 o'clock.
Medicare launched a pilot program in July that could make some popular weight loss drugs known as GLP-1s more affordable, but millions of Medicare patients won't qualify.
I'm at risk for stroke, I'm pre-diabetic, and yet I can't get it.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. That story on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
You can hear it this afternoon. It starts at 3 o'clock.
The Houston Public Media Foundation Board proudly stands with our community in supporting the Resiliency Fund. Their leadership and generosity are helping strengthen the future of trusted local journalism. Thank you to our Foundation Board for investing in Houston Public Media.
Support comes from Houston Theater Week, a citywide celebration of live performances. Participating organizations include theater, dance, and music presenters. Returning August 24th through the 30th. Tickets at HoustonTheaterWeek.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Women's Institute of Houston. Join a community of lifelong learners and discover history, literature, current events, art, mahjong, and more through engaging classes. More info at WIH.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from St. Arnold Brewing Company, a place for corporate events on tap. Meeting rooms, AV equipment, and full catering available. More at StArnold.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now Ernie Manous and Tessa Barrera.
Well, welcome back. Cities across Texas are facing growing financial struggles as costs rise and tax revenue slows. Some of the state's biggest cities are now looking at multi-million-dollar deficits and weighing options like spending cuts and tax increases to address their budget woes. So what exactly is driving these budget problems, and what are city leaders doing about them? Joining us is Josh Fechter, urban affairs reporter for the Texas Tribune, who recently reported on the matter. Joshua, thanks so much for joining us on Hello Houston.
Thanks so much for having me.
I guess where we start with all of this is we sit here in Houston and in Harris County. How does our situation compare to what's going on statewide?
So Houston and Harris County are in the same position that a lot of these big cities and counties are in. They're facing, slowing sales tax revenue, property values that used to be booming but have slowed, rising costs and inflation that are putting a pinch on the budgets.
In addition to that, we've talked about these situations before on this show with officials from both Harris County and the city, and they often talk about where there are caps, where there are state regulations that tie their hands in the ways they can bring in money to help offset these problems. Can you talk a little bit about statewide regulations and where are the limits of what our local municipalities can do?
Sure. Basically, there are a couple of big limits that cities and counties face. The state has a 3.5% cap on how much a city or county can take in new property tax revenue each year, and that's without going to the voters. If cities or counties want to go over that limit, they have to ask voters. And, we saw some of the results of that last year when Austin asked for a tax rate increase that basically was exceeded the amount that they could just automatically do. Voters shot it down by about a 2-to-1 margin. And that is a mechanism that's intended to keep property tax bills in check. Another aspect of state policy that affects city budgets is they basically say you cannot put a dent in public safety costs without asking voters. And that is, that was in response to basically this perceived, defund the police movement. But very few Texas cities or counties, if any, actually cut their police spending as a result of that movement. Nonetheless, the legislature made that a law. And, that kind of puts cities in a financial bind because basically their costs have only gone up since the law has passed. And, it's very difficult to cut those.
If the cities in the counties all push to the limit they're allowed to push to without having to go to the voters, would that work at balancing budgets, or is that just still not enough? They have to get on a ballot.
It just depends from city to city. Cities and counties, some are, considering, some pretty deep cuts. Others are considering going up to that amount to sort of balance their budgets. But it's usually a balance of the two that I'm seeing. You're combining increases in taxes if those are adopted with cuts if you're seeing those increases sought.
We are speaking with Joshua Fechter. He is the urban affairs reporter for the Texas Tribune. If anyone would like to join the conversation, you can call or text 713-440-8870. Joshua, I read your report and we learned about Dallas, the budget gap being $51 million. In Fort Worth, it's $94 million. San Antonio facing a deficit. And we learned about Austin and their structural deficit. What sticks out for you, if anything, that is concerning for specifically Houston?
For Houston, it is basically the same boat that all of these cities are in. You had several years where basically the economy was just doing gangbusters in Texas. You had rising property values. You had growing sales tax that was just absolutely doing a great job of padding budgets. But now Houston and Harris County are in the same boat as everybody else. Property values have slowed, home sales have slowed. You have sales tax that is not growing as much as it was kind of in the hot years of the immediately following the pandemic when we had hundreds of thousands of people moving to Texas. And so like that sort of steadier growth is just putting a pinch on Houston and Harris County's budget the way it is on everybody else's budget.
I want to remind folks, if you have questions for Joshua as we look at budgets and how we figure all this out and how we find balance and equity and all of that, give us a call, 713-440-8870. I want to go back to the point you were making about, you've got to have to cut some services and you've got to raise revenue to be able to find these balances. And I know that's oversimplifying what you said, but what I'm curious about is the whole idea that we heard so much about for a long time, and is this still something that could reap us some reward, is maybe when you look at these budgets, mismanagement, overspending, reckless spending, or has all that fat been cut from a lot of these cities? Specifically, let's talk Houston and Harris County from what you look at. Is there enough fat on the bone, in a sense, to be able to get enough money to do something that moves there? Or is this just something we like to talk about, but in reality, there's not that much wasted money?
There's always an argument to be made about, whether cities and counties can find places to cut, right? I mean, that is always going to be sort of part of the equation that people are going to say, like, well, if you're in a pinch, you've just got to cut. And you're seeing that in some cities, right? Dallas is looking at cutting library hours. They've already looked at laying off, a certain amount of employees.
I'm not actually talking about services and practices that have a value to them. I'm talking about things that are buried in or overestimated or more money, where we see, the whole Doge approach, which was like, oh, there's massive misspending. In that concept, is that a reality? Or like you're saying, no, what would have to happen is services hours are going to have to be cut. No one's sitting on no pun intended, a $20,000 toilet. That's not massive, crazy spending. That's already been sussed out.
Sure. And it basically varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, right? I mean, Austin right now, they are like basically going through their budget with a fine-tooth comb, looking at like these contracts for, nonprofits. Like, hey, are these nonprofits that we outsource some services to, are they meeting the mark, right? Mm-hmm. And so like there are always probably going to be places to look for, additional sort of spending cuts. But a lot of these things are probably going to be on the margins, right? Your big cost drivers are, healthcare costs for employees, wage increases for employees, and that includes public safety. You've got increases in your public safety budget. And like those are things that are going to be really hard to cut.
We spend a lot of time here talking about public safety and the increases for our police and our emergency service folks out there. Are we in a position that we have built an unrealistic model, or is it something we have to figure out how to deal with, because this is a reality that's going to continue to grow? These pensions, all of that. Did we set ourselves up for a poor plan, or was it a plan that had to happen and we've just got to find a way to pay for it?
That I think is an interesting way of framing it. I would say that, basically like city budgets are not, from my reporting, are basically just like not built in a way to sustain what, these kinds of costs. They're dealing with these mandates from the legislature, for one, that basically public safety budgets can never decrease. Unless, the overall city spending bucket, decreases. And, there's only so much that you can squeeze out of the tax base, for example. We have a lot of sales tax exemptions in Texas. Some folks I spoke with said that, those are things that the legislature could theoretically take up to help cities and counties pay for these things, basically letting more things, getting rid of some of these exemptions and letting more things be taxed, from the sales tax perspective. And then other people I spoke with also said, part of the thing is that we need to build more housing, and that will increase the property tax base while also, basically spreading out the tax burden among a greater number of households.
We're speaking with Joshua Fechter, urban affairs reporter for the Texas Tribune. Joshua, it seems that the people always affected the most will be those low-income people. Texas has long prided itself to be a place where these mega companies can come in and be in the community and offer more jobs. How will these lower-income neighborhoods and these services that are often taken from them, how will that affect families?
Well, it's true that, often those kinds of services are, basically first on the chopping block, right? I mean, these are, I revert back to Dallas, right, where you're talking about reducing library hours that potentially could, fall on the backs of lower income families, lower income neighborhoods. These are services that folks who are lower on the income ladder, rely on. And what is going to happen, if cities, cut too deep, or counties cut too deep on some of these services. We'll just have to wait and see. But you're also seeing sort of a pushback on some of these local governments that they don't want to cut into these services, that they're trying to preserve some of them as best as possible because they don't want to, they don't want any sort of adverse outcomes there.
Is there much duplication? I bring that up because you're talking about libraries again. You're talking about it in the Dallas area, but like here in our area, we have the Houston Library and we have the Harris County Public Library. Are there things that could be merged, or is the problem counties and cities are territorial and they don't want to have these conversations? Or in light of where we are today, they're starting to actually have them?
Right. And that's a good question. A lot of the folks that I talked to also were just kind of thinking like, look, like maybe there are ways that we can sort of rethink government services, the way that we provide them. We have emergent technologies that give access to books, for example, that, didn't exist, a decade or 2 decades ago. Maybe we need to rethink ways that we provide services. And so, perhaps this is an opportunity for cities and counties to rethink measures like that.
Phone number here is 713-440-8870. If you'd like to ask Joshua a question or share in the conversation, Babur is on the line. What's on your mind today?
I think a lot of basic things that we can do that would save us a lot of money and also raise money. So we should fix the overtime structure, right? Staffing model, mandatory overtime caps, better shift scheduling, eliminate non-essential vacant positions. I think the city conducted its own EVI audit that I believe it paid like $4 million for that flagged 4,000 jobs, consolidate duplicative vendor contracts, a lot of vendors doing the same work, management delayering, and then P-card control tightening. If you add those up, you're looking at about $170 to $315 million in savings. And instead of, fighting the old fight that never gets anywhere on raising property taxes, we should, do things like right of way, right? Fee plus full cost solid waste recovery combo. Those two alone generate about $250 million a year without having to do the whole property tax fight cap. So there are a lot of things that can be done that somehow, I don't know if it's political or vested interests, that they simply don't.
Barbara, thank you for calling and sharing that with us. Joshua, your reaction to his comments. Should he be balancing our state budget?
Yes.
Well, and he's on the right track in terms of like what some of these city budget writers are looking at. They're looking at eliminating vacant positions, kind of looking at like, are we going to hire somebody for that position anytime soon? Do we actually need it? That is something that has been like sort of heavily scrutinized in sort of the budgets that and sort of the budget cycles that I've been looking at. And then, he brings up an important point about overtime pay. A lot of cities and counties are facing law enforcement shortages. They need more police officers. They need more firefighters. And so like they've racked up a lot of overtime pay partially as a result of that. And so there's been a lot more scrutiny on sort of the overtime pay that is paid out to, some of these officers. You'll see like city councils and commissioners courts kind of grill their fire and public safety chiefs about that.
Midtown Mars put in a comment, and I'm curious your thoughts on this because I think a lot of people agree and think this is the true answer. He said, I believe our budget issue with the city and county budget is mismanagement. These guys seem to have no out-of-the-box creativity when it comes to serving the public needs and increasing revenue. Can that be seen as an accurate statement, or is it an oversimplification?
Yeah, and I think there's always going to be a debate about like, how are your city councils, are your commissioners courts, are your city and county budget people, are they doing a good job managing the budget? Are they letting costs get out of control? Are they doing that? Are they overspending?
So from your research, sure. Are they? From what you look at?
And some of these costs, it seems like are out of their control at this point. The costs of, providing government services has grown the same way that, everybody's experienced inflation growing. You have healthcare costs that are largely out of the city's control. Some of them are reverting to like, cheaper health plans as a result. You have these mandates from the state that make it, more difficult to sort of manage the budgets. But, you also have some research that shows, perhaps, cities, their budgets have grown, faster than they needed to. Texas Public Policy Foundation, which is the conservative think tank, has basically had research that looks at spending of cities and counties, matched to inflation and population, and found that they've largely exceeded the rate of inflation and population growth.
Well, Joshua Fechter is the urban affairs reporter for the Texas Tribune. Joshua, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Keep an eye on those budgets for us.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Absolutely. Coming up, we'll discuss solar radiation management and why a new study out of the University of Houston suggests why we shouldn't ban it outright. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
I'm Rob Schmitz. We wrap up our week-long look at law enforcement's growing AI entanglement with surveillance and Flock, a company in the news for all the wrong reasons.
Another Flock camera has been cut down in Cape Coral.
Officers using the mapping feature to look up the locations of women in their life.
Next time on Here and Now.
Meet Damola, songwriter, world-class violinist, and award-winning multi-genre artist. We just took his keys for the day and gave him a Ride Metro fare card. Visit ridemetro.org/Damola to learn more about his ride.
And the guy just looked up from his notebook and he goes, people with Asperger's generally have above average IQs, so.
That's his week.
You can hear it tonight at 10 o'clock.
Hey, take a quick glance at your phone, would you? It might be the future of video storytelling.
It further solidifies our mission from the beginning of creating premium Hollywood-level content. And this is quite literally the convergence of Hollywood and the vertical space here on the iconic Sunset Las Palmas.
I'm Kai Risdall. Vertical video gets the Hollywood treatment next time on Marketplace.
Listen to Marketplace tonight. That's at 6:30. Support comes from Stages, presenting Come From Away, opening September 18th. This Broadway musical tells the true story of a town in Newfoundland that welcomed stranded travelers after September 11th and the community's response in the days that followed. StagesHouston.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Audie International School, where students from PK3 to 12th grade grow in curiosity and courage, preparing them to make their mark on the world. The future's so bright at Audie. More at audie.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Ernie Manous and Tessa Barrera.
Welcome back to Hello Houston. Today we're talking SRM, that's solar radiation management, and it's a theoretical way of slowing global warming by reflecting a small amount of sunlight back into space. The idea is still largely in the research stage, and scientists are studying its potential risks and benefits. A new report from the University of Houston Law Center argues that states should regulate this research rather than ban it outright. The report proposes a permitting system that would allow carefully controlled research with public oversight and strict safeguards. Joining us to tell us more about the report is Tracy Hester. He's a co-director of the Law Center's Environment, Energy, and Natural Resources Law Center and the University of Houston Center for Carbon Management and Energy. Tracy, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you very much for having me.
I guess we could start in two different directions, but let's start with the most broad. Explain a little bit better what solar radiation management is.
It is the idea of basically shaving a small amount of the solar radiation that reaches the Earth's surface that causes the warming back out into space before it reaches us. So it's actually modeled in a natural phenomenon where we've seen in prior instances where volcanoes have erupted, in particular Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines, where they inject massive amounts of sulfur dioxide up into the upper stratosphere. And from there, it spreads very quickly over the entire globe. We measure actual reductions in global surface temperatures of up to a degree or more whenever we have a major volcanic event like that that has that sort of injection. The idea is to mimic it, but instead of sort of a massive volcanic event, we have the dispersal of these sulfates in a controlled manner from high altitude aircraft. In theory, this approach, and let me stress, in theory, this approach would mean
important part of the conversation.
As you know, a lot of this is all still on blackboards and monitors and computer modeling. But the idea is that for a relatively small amount of investment to have this fleet and invest and disperse the sulfates, the aerosols, you can offset vastly larger amounts of climate change damages. So there's been an interest in this for a long time, but the very things that make it comparatively cheap and easy, theoretically, I'm going to be saying theoretically a lot, is the concern. Because in theory, there might be someone who just wants to move ahead. And the way that this technology has been initially thought about, it's an on-off switch. It's global or it's not. So if another nation, be it us, be it China, be it India, if they chose to do it, they might be making a decision on behalf of the globe without others having a chance to weigh in.
And when you talk about this, in the read that we introduced you with, it says that states should regulate. But you're talking about something global. Why are we talking states, or do you mean states in a more general term, or do you mean states like the actual states?
I mean states like Texas.
Okay, shouldn't this be a federal policy then if it's affecting global behavior as opposed to what Texas wants to do, what Alabama wants to do, what California wants to do?
Well, this may shock you, but there is no Solar Radiation Management Act in the federal level. And the prospects of having one seem very low. We do have existing federal environmental laws that theoretically could be extended to cover to them. But for now, the only law that directly applies federally is a reporting requirement that goes back to Gerald Ford's presidency. That, just serves totally different purposes, really focused on rainmaking and weather modification, not this sort of global technology. So the idea is that several states have grown concerned that this type of activity might be done by private parties or being done in a way that doesn't have full transparency. So as a result, what they've done is basically they just want a hard stop. So we actually had 133 bills introduced at different state legislatures around the country. And as a result, only 3 have actually become law, but Florida's actually made it a felony. The idea is they just don't want it happening inside their borders. Now, open question, what if someone does it outside their borders, but it impacts within their borders? We're not anywhere near that right now. But this legislation has sort of a mixed provenance. It's both directing this idea of global climate modification, but it's also focused on and woven into a separate strand of concerns built up about the chemtrails theories, which I'm not sure if you've talked about this in the show. We may need another 12 minutes.
We do. We need a segment on chemtrails as well. Go ahead,
okay,
Dr.
But in short, and not at the
Mr.
risk,
Hester.
Just Tracy. I think the idea with chemtrails is that there has been an ongoing secretive campaign to mix in chemicals with jet fuel. That's why contrails show up in the sky and they look different than they have in the past. And there is a substantial portion of Americans who passionately believe that these chemicals are being dispersed without their knowledge and consent. So this legislation does 2 things at once. It goes after this feeling that there's this sort of, I hate to use the word conspiracy because I don't want to be disrespectful. People have reasons to believe what they believe, but there is no evidence that this is happening anywhere at any kind of scale. But that concern has led to legislation, which is now being conflated with this solar radiation modification scientific inquiry into how to actually offset climate change. And, it doesn't draw lines. It's all in one big ball of wax at this point.
So the report we're talking about is the case against blanket bans. It's a state permitting model for solar radiation management. We're speaking with Tracy Hester, who is the co-director of the University of Houston's Law Center Environment, Energy, and National Resources Law Center. So if you'd like to join the conversation, you can call or text 713-440-8870. Tracy, the report is interesting, and it has a map of the states that you are talking about, the states that ban SRM completely, the states that are possibly interested in regulating it. As this report is focusing on Texas, I'm just curious how the Law Center was impassioned to create this report altogether. How did this all start, and why is it so necessary?
Well, in part because we're already seeing action in Austin. There were 3 bills introduced in the last legislative session to ban it outright. So we expect that interest will continue.
Right.
So the idea is to put another alternative approach on the table for legislators to have a chance to think about and, frankly, have us a chance to create a platform for us to talk with them about. Our hope is that we can bring together folks from both ends of the political spectrum who share common interest in this and just have a sort of transparent, above-table response that just lets us let us do research, but do it in a way that has permitting oversight so everyone feels comfortable with what's happening. But let me stress two things. I am not saying that any of this is happening yet anywhere in the state. This is all over the horizon. And second, and I have to say every time I talk about this, I am not endorsing this technology. I'm not suggesting we do it, but I am concerned that someday, somewhere, someone's going to feel like their hands are behind their back, they're pressing against the wall, there's an emergency they need the response to, and they're going to want to make a decision, but they're not going to have the data or the information or the credibility to be able to do it in a way that people are not going to feel imperiled. So it's sort of a way to sort of get people to think about it before the curve comes.
Getting ahead of people maybe being panicked or confused by the idea. I'd imagine there's bipartisan support when it comes to climate change. I would hope that there's bipartisan support. How can these laws prevent this research, using this research to like just make it as another excuse for maybe burning fossil fuels or something of that nature?
Well, that is. We have been in a gridlock for decades on this research because of the moral risk fear. The idea that it will be licensed to keep burning, and that's no one, it'd be like basically driving with your foot floored on the gas but pressing the hard as you can on the brake at the same time. It's just not a rational strategy. But having said that, I got to say that I've been surprised. The folks I'm talking to about this is not all climate change warriors on the far progressive side. It is not folks on the deep Republican side or conservative side. They have concerns about what they call weather sovereignty and sort of maintaining control of the weather for the protection of the populace. But they are sort of finding a middle ground to talk about, which is kind of a refreshing surprise for environmental policy these days.
Does it also include the research, acknowledging the research that has to happen to make educated decisions, or is it just about regulating who should and who can?
It doesn't provide funding or control or direction on research, but the permitting system is designed to expressly allow research. It is targeting to anyone who wants to actually deploy it. That's when you need a permit. And it talks about when you draw the line, because a lot of times the same exact outdoor project can, based on what your intent is, it looks exactly the same, but one solar radiation modification for changing the climate, the other one is just seeing what the stratosphere does if you poke it. So we had to sort of figure out how to draw the lines.
Is there similar legislation that we can put our minds around that's happened before, where a technology has been emerging but not there yet, and the move to understand how to regulate it has been proposed?
Not one that I view as a perfect model, but we, as you know, have this debate all the time. Going back, there is a lot of concern about the idea that we might have what are called nanoparticles, things that are so small, like less than a billionth of a meter in diameter, that they just go right through the cell wall and have direct medical effects. And there was a huge amount of concern about that around 15 years ago. What happened? EPA actually hosted a whole series of roundtables. We actually got together with the American Bar Association talking about what laws should be complied to it, and mapped out how to respond if someone actually got injured by these particles before it actually happened. So when we actually had the first instances for example, it was in China where some workers were actually suffered a fatality incident, turned out that it was a great platform for us to jump on it quickly and figure out what was going on. And I'm hoping that we can sort of have that same sort of preparatory early response ethic for all this.
Tracy, thank you so much for coming in and starting this conversation with us.
We sure we can have another hour?
Come back for another hour.
Okay.
We'll have you back anytime you want to come. Tracy Hester is the co-director of the University of Houston Law Center's Environmental Energy and Natural Resources Law Center and the University of Houston Center for Carbon Management and Energy. Coming up, another whole hour with Tessa and Ernie.
Lucky us.
Lucky
Tracy's
you.
Jealous.
Yeah. See you right after the news.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, Miles O'Brien travels the globe searching for solutions to climate, water, and health crises. The answers may be closer than we think on the new series Resolve to Solve. Tonight at 9 on TV8. Remember, you can watch Hello Houston on HPM Plus. It's free to download for smart TVs. Mostly cloudy and 90. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, a move that could cost Texas teachers their job, what Governor Greg Abbott said on Tuesday that will ban school districts employing anyone with an H-1B visa. We'll discuss this and more as we continue diving into the top headlines of the day. I'm Tessa Barrera.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Could Texas election officials reshape how you vote in November? Democracy Docket's Jen Rice joins us to unpack the growing battle ahead of the midterms.
Plus, what happens when a towering new development becomes a canvas for community history? Chef Chris Williams joins us to talk about a Houston mural inspired by legendary artist John Biggers.
Also, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Remember, you can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump says on Truth Social that he is nominating Dr. Heidi Overton to lead the Food and Drug Administration. Overton has regularly briefed Trump on health policy matters. She was present when the president issued an executive order recently to reduce the number of childhood vaccinations, a move widely criticized by public health experts. The United Arab Emirates says it is suspending all trade with Iran after it came under Iranian missile attack. NPR's Hadil Al-Shalchi has the latest.
The Emirati Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that it was halting all trade, commercial exchanges, and financial transactions with Iran until further notice after what it called, quote, regional escalations. On Tuesday, the UAE's defense ministry said Iranian missiles fell in open water. The Iranian foreign minister denied the allegation. The UAE came under intense fire as Iran targeted U.S. installations in the Gulf and Jordan at the beginning of the almost 6-month war that shows no sign of ending. The latest sanction will put increasing pressure on Iran as the U.S. prepares to expand its economic restrictions on the country. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Istanbul.
Voters in Alaska narrowed the field in races for Congress and governor during yesterday's primary elections. Alaska Public Media's Eric Stone reports all eyes are on the state's U.S. Senate race, which Democrats hope will help them flip the chamber.
Democratic former Congresswoman Mary Peltola is leading incumbent Republican Senator Dan Sullivan in the race for Senate. Both will advance to the general election in November, according to a race call by the Associated Press. Who will take the third and fourth spots on the ballot after Alaska's unique top four nonpartisan primary is up in the air. But as of late Thursday night, a retired teacher with the same first and last name as the incumbent Sullivan looked as if he might make the cut. Some Republicans have accused him of trying to siphon votes from the incumbent Sullivan. The teacher, though, insists he's simply fed up with the senator who shares his name. Alaska voters also narrowed a 17-candidate field to 4 in the race for governor. For NPR News, I'm Eric Stone in Juneau.
Kenyan authorities are investigating a helicopter crash that may have involved American lives. ABC News and NBC News both cite the State Department in reporting 4 U.S. deaths. Kenya's aviation agency says there were 7 people on board the aircraft when it went down this morning in a remote part of northern Kenya. The locally owned Lady Lori helicopter says the aircraft was operating a charter flight when it crashed. It was carrying guests with travel company and beyond. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's fired one of the most senior members of his government in the wake of a broad corruption investigation that has also implicated a former lawmaker, bank officials, and Ukraine's former justice and energy ministers. Yesterday, the recently ousted defense minister demanded national elections. However, Zelensky says the law bars such a vote while Ukraine is at war with Russia. You're listening to NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Shelby Rose. New guidelines for flock camera usage are going into effect after concerns about potential misuse and unwarranted surveillance. Christopher Rivera with the Texas Civil Rights Project says they are weighing a lawsuit to stop the possible violation of Fourth Amendment rights.
But it's something our team has discussed and we are looking into, in particular with recent Supreme Court case rulings that would suggest that using these types of devices would be inherently a way that's actually trampling our Fourth Amendment rights.
Rivera says his group is looking into whether there has been any connection between Flock and ICE to conduct surveillance on citizens using their license plate reading cameras. Minnesota's Attorney General is suing Governor Abbott for failing to send an ICE agent back to Minnesota to face charges. 52-year-old Christian Castro was arrested by the Texas Rangers in May for shooting through a door and injuring a man during an immigration crackdown in Minnesota. They claim Castro initially lied to law enforcement that he was attacked first, but video evidence allegedly shows otherwise. So he is charged with 4 counts of second-degree assault and 1 count of falsely reporting a crime. And Minnesota AG Keith Ellison wants him back, but says Governor Abbott isn't playing ball.
Whether or not he needed the lesson, I cited all relevant constitutional and legal authorities that leave him no discretion in this matter. I informed him that if he did not sign the rendition warrant by the end of the day yesterday, I would sue to compel him to do so. Governor Abbott did not respond.
This lawsuit filed yesterday morning is asking the federal court in Texas to require Governor Abbott to sign the warrant and to not free Castro before Minnesota law enforcement picks him up. The longtime drummer for ZZ Top has died in Fort Bend County. Frank Beard was 77 and passed away in hospice care with his family by his side, according to the band. Beard joined ZZ Top in 1969 and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with his bandmates in 2003. He's the second original member to die, following bassist Dusty Hill in 2021. ZZ Top will still perform at Austin City Limits Live later this year. I'm Shelby Rose, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from Progressive Insurance, committed to helping homeowners compare and choose home insurance from a network of companies in one place with Home Quote Explorer. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
Live from Houston Public Media News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Ernie Manous and Tessa Barrera.
And we are back again, going into the second hour. Fascinating first hour. You know, we learned about budgeting a little bit there, what the states and the city and the counties can be doing as they face these difficult challenges. They're going to be getting underway as they're trying to figure out, at least we know for Harris County's budget is coming right up on us. And it's going to be interesting to see how we're going to do it. There have been proposed property tax increases.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
never makes people happy.
I don't know if okay is the right word, but the no state tax I know is attractive, but then when you're hit with that property bill, it kind of like
I think you feel less bothered by it if you feel like your public services are being taken care of. You know, if everything's running smoothly or in need of running smoothly and you trust the organization doing it, you hear a little increase in cost and it's going to give you better services, you feel more comfortable.
Right.
If you're sitting around and you feel like there's mismanagement and your garbage isn't being picked up and the streets are all a mess and they're saying, no, we need more money, and you're like, I don't think you're going to fix this problem.
Totally.
That's when I think it becomes more of a problem for people.
I agree.
You agree with me there?
I do. I have a special kind of disdain reserved for when the taxes come around.
Yeah. Now, do you rent or own?
So both. Yeah, and
my little mogul over here.
Well, I bought a house because I go, American dream. That's just kind of what people do, right? And then I quickly realized that house living wasn't for me, and then I had 2 jobs at one point, and my house was just not in the right place. I didn't have the foresight to know where I would be working in Houston or where my media career would take me. So yeah, I'm in an interesting position, and it is Yeah, like it's not my favorite at all. Owning a house is not for me. Be honest with yourself before you purchase a house. What kind of gal are you? Because I think I'm call the maintenance and fix it kind of gal, not being the maintenance.
I'm that kind of guy. I loved renting because if there was ever a problem, it wasn't my problem. It was someone else's. My problem was at the end of the day, when I no longer join you every day like this and I don't have my regular paycheck coming in, I want something that's paid for.
Right.
I don't want to be worrying about, I've always got to pay the rent. And I know, yes, there's taxes, there's fees, there's costs, but I don't want that extra burden. I want to know it's mine.
Right.
So I ended up buying the place I was renting. So
well, you can't leave. You're not going to leave the show soon. I just got here. So.
Oh, I'm not planning. I'm planning on leaving the show in a body
Well,
bag.
who knows what property taxes will be like by the time that the stint is over. Just saying.
You know, I may not have those answers, but I do have the answer to the Would You Rather poll.
Ooh, hit me.
Here you go. So the question was, would you rather, and this was only over on our YouTube chat, so if you don't do those on Wednesdays, we put them up all through the week. We always have polls about what we're talking about, so it's always fun to follow us in the chat on our YouTube. But would you rather only use a flip phone or only watch black and white TV? Well, the votes are in, and I'm pretty surprised by this. 77% of people would rather only use a flip phone than have to be subjected to black and white TV.
I mean, it's like do you want to be Dorothy before she gets to Oz in the black and white in the tornado on the farm, or do you want to be vibrant in Munchkin Land and see all the colors? You know, that's like.
But I can go outside and see all the colors. 23% of you said you would rather only watch black and white TV and keep your crazy phones.
There you go. Well, a lot of people younger people especially, they watch their shows on their phone. Like,
yeah. Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a fondness for black and white old movies. I love a good black and white movie.
You're so nostalgic.
I am.
You're so vintage.
You know.
You're such a classic man.
Though, I was going to get into another topic. It's going to come up eventually, and we'll talk about it. It's that. Okay, I'm gonna force the lead about that movie that was made in China. That these people made this animated film. We'll get to it eventually, but it's really cool because I was looking at it, and it's very low tech. But it's so colorful. It's really cool that it's like a unique art form. So I do appreciate color.
Uh-huh.
But I can also enjoy a good black and white film, black and white TV show. Dick Van Dyke Show, here you come. Okay. All of that being said, we're going to be talking about a lot this hour. We've got voting coming up. The voting part's going to be really interesting. Democracy Docket, they do a lot on fighting for the right to vote, to challenge when laws and issues and problems arise in our voting. They're going to be telling us what they're watching for the midterms that's coming up and what we should all be concerned with from their point of view. And then also we're going to celebrate the artist John Biggers. There's a mural coming up, or at least the proposed mural, about his work, and we'll be talking about that later in the show. But it's time for the headlines.
Governor Greg Abbott said Tuesday he plans to call for a ban on school districts employing anyone with an H-1B visa, a move that could cost hundreds of Texas teachers their jobs. At a news conference in Austin, Abbott said the ban was part of a sweeping effort to stamp out indoctrination in the classroom that includes forbidding schools from accepting gifts or partnerships with foreign governments. Bottom line is this: foreign influence of any kind has no place in our classrooms, Abbott said at a Tuesday news conference in Austin. If approved by the legislature next year, Texas could become the first state in the country to ban school districts from hiring teachers under the federal program. It also placed additional pressure on superintendents to find people to teach Spanish and other foreign languages. Texas's public schools have been the largest sponsor of H-1B visas in the nation in recent years. Dallas ISD employs more than any other school district. The move follows years of scrutiny into the federal program by President Donald Trump, who has accused employers of using H-1B visas to avoid hiring more expensive American workers. All right, class, what are your thoughts on this move by Abbott? You can call or text 713-440-8870.
I guess for me, the question is, where was the problem? And, give me the problem that you're needing to fix, or is it a problem you're manufacturing so you can have yet one more point to talk about when you're on the campaign trail?
Well, I thought the problem was a teacher shortage. I thought that was a sweeping problem.
So how is this fixing that problem?
It's making it worse. It's exacerbating a problem that we already know our community has. And we were talking about this yesterday, Ernie, how teachers are notoriously underpaid and in the state of HISD micromanage, with the state takeover. So this is just, to me, bad policy.
Remember,
culture. This visa attracts, cultured talent. And why is having culture or people that can speak multi-languages, bilingual people, don't you want your kids around people that can speak multiple languages? I know as Americans, we really don't. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say a definition of it for those of you following along that may not remember. H-1B visa, a temporary non-immigrant U.S. visa that allows American companies, or in this case the government or the education system, to hire foreign workers in specialized fields that require theoretical or technical expertise, such as in IT, engineering, mathematics, and science. Okay, it's not random, and I hate you, undocumented immigrants flooding into...
It's illegal immigration. Don't people always say that? Do it the right way?
For specialized people who we are requiring or requesting come to our country to work and share their knowledge. Why is this something we're... Okay, let me restate this way. Those of you who agree with the governor and understand why this is a problem, please call in right now and talk to us about it. I want to understand, what am I possibly missing in this argument that is why this is a problem and why we should pay attention to it? Because we're not talking about law-breaking, illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants in our country taking jobs. I don't understand what the issue is.
I can't help but think, I know the story was focused more around teachers,
right?
But I think of our backyard. I think of our medical center. I think of the amazing international talent that we have in this city. And I think of all the international patients that visit Houston to get treatment who speak another language. It's just very frustrating for someone like me, because we talk about this, that rising tides raise all ships. So I don't understand. I think we do need to maybe go to the phone lines or get some people who can help, perhaps.
And remember, our First Lady, Melania Trump, entered the United States on a tourist visa and then obtained her H-1B working visa for modeling. So, okay, is that her extraordinary skill and ability?
Well, did she steal a modeling contract for an American
Right. Did she indoctrinate models because she was here on an H-1B visa? No.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. And if, in fact, in a classroom, there is a concern with the way a particular teacher is teaching, and as they call it, indoctrination in the classroom, deal with that individual if you have an issue there, which I don't even want to go to that topic, but deal with it on a one-on-one basis. But I don't understand, especially you bring up the best point in all of this, Tessa, is the whole fact of, is it taking jobs? We have a shortage of teachers. We need qualified teachers if this is a way. And they are regulated. That's how we know how many of them there are, because these are applied for through Texas Workforce. They pay attention to it. They know who's in the country. It's a very different thing.
Yeah, and it's people with this visa, this H-1B visa, they're here legally. And they're here working, they're here contributing to society. So, I mean, we talk about the importance of educating our kids and culturing the youth and how the youth is so important. I mean, and then, like I said, this is one of my favorite things about Houston, where you can ride on a metro and hear different languages being spoke. And it's just, it really, truly is a city that's so diverse, and that's what makes it beautiful. So taking away from that would just really be disheartening. I know we have a call from Cyprus. Jared, what do you have?
Yeah, thank you so much. Glad to be on the show, and add a little bit of thought to the conversation in that the immigration issue isn't, to me, it's not the main issue. The main issue is that with H-1Bs, those are issued on a temporary status, so they're not going to be a long-term fix. So I'm not saying I agree or disagree with the sentiment of the governor. However, you got to keep in mind those H-1Bs will eventually expire and they cost money. So it's maybe a short-term solution to a longer-term problem.
A great point. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I just think the word immigration is a buzzword right now. And so if we can tag it to anything, if we're this governor, it's good for me at the polls. Right. So let's have an attack on yet another form of immigration. Immigration is not the problem in this country. Illegal immigration, breaking laws, those are of concern. Overstaying visas might be of a concern. This, I don't think, is of a concern.
I appreciate Jared calling in to remind everyone that it is not a forever status, or, you're not gaining citizenship from this. You are coming to specifically do a job and work. But that's like getting a 3-month travel visa to go to another country and explore, to clear yourself, to make it legal for you to kind of bounce around. And culturally, it's almost like putting a negative connotation against like being cultured, to go see how another country operates and does things. If you had an opportunity to go be on the radio, in Australia for 3 months, and they say you were going to do it, wouldn't you take that? Wouldn't you want to go explore and see what that was like? And wouldn't it add to your growth as a person and perhaps, show people, the American culture? It's kind of odd to me.
Okay, we had Eric wrote in and said, I don't know why a K through 12 district would need H-1B visas, and I doubt there are very many, but clearly this is a racist dog whistle. Just call it what it is. An email came in my humble opinion, Abbott is trying to out-Trump Trump. Thank goodness my children graduated many years ago. That was from Doris. And then my British computer guy says, Ernie, you nailed it when you said it's just a device to be used for political commentary. So I do want to go to one other point on this story before we move on, and you brought it up, and talking about immigration and passports and all of that stuff. If you all know, Donald Trump has put his picture on a certain limited edition U.S. passport, the 250th anniversary passports. And underneath it's the quote from him that says, welcome, but be good, as though you use your passport to come into the U.S., but they're for us to go out of the U.S.
Right.
And identify ourselves. We're not the guests. So I don't understand his quote under his own picture. But I leave that to wiser minds than mine to figure out what he meant by welcome but be good on a U.S. passport to U.S. citizens. Anyway, you want to take us to the next story?
Sure. The city of Houston has asked a federal court to reconsider its ruling that found the city's minority-owned business program is unconstitutional. The request comes after U.S. Judge David Hittner ruled last month that part of the city's Minority Women and Small Business Enterprise program, which was created in 1984, was unconstitutional because it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Under the program, the city has required some municipal government contracts to be awarded to minority-owned businesses. The filing by the city Monday in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas was a motion to alter or amend the judgment made by Hittner and not an appeal to the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. In the motion, Houston City Attorney Arturo Michael said he disagrees with the judge's ruling and claimed the judge made a clear error of law when interpreting the court precedent. The city argues that because the program utilizes racial classification, it's subject to strict judicial scrutiny, but the plaintiffs have not proven that the city has failed to meet that scrutiny. What are your thoughts? Call or text us 713-440-8870.
This has to come with the fact that I barely remember things anymore. But when we talked about this topic the last time, I think they were talking about the point systems that apply and how different things indicate different points, and that's how then a contract can be considered. And in that realm, I am all for review of how policies work and how they function. But to say that because you are supporting minority businesses that maybe aren't on the same playing field but provide the same services, I don't see how that's a problem.
So the city, I'm just trying to clear it up. So the city is asking the court to reconsider that it's unconstitutional.
Right.
So this program was struck down last month, and the judge sided with a white couple who sued the city.
They said they were racially discriminated against. I'm probably paraphrasing it poorly. Racially discriminated against because they were a white business. Had they been a minority business, they wouldn't have faced the same scrutiny, and so that was unfair. But I believe there was problems in also what were actually the damages that happened, and the concern behind it, and proving that another company that was minority run had actually gotten the contract. If I'm remembering this correctly, I'm sure somebody in our chat group will correct me if I'm wrong on that. So it's just it's an interesting thing. I'm curious to see how this plays out, and I'm sure we will address it when we know what the courts are deciding and how this all comes to be.
That's right.
There you go. A lot going on. Coming up still, we're going to get into something I do know more about, and that's ballots and the problems we're having with voting in this country. Where are the concerns? What should we be looking at? Where are there problems and what are the solutions? Are there problems? Do they need solutions? Jen Rice is going to join us from Democracy Docket to walk through all of that as we head into the midterms. This is News 88.7.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
/cars.
The big question is about the physical magnitude of El Nino, the things happening in the ocean. Are those becoming more intense or more frequent because of the way we're fiddling with the planet? And this is the million-dollar question for scientists.
I'm Michael Barbaro. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
Listen to The Daily tonight at 7 o'clock.
More to watch, more to discover, more to learn. HPM Plus streams the best of PBS and Houston Public Media. Kids, drama, science, local, all in one free app. Go live with channels like TV8, Create, PBS Kids, NHK World, and more, streaming around the clock. And PBS members get full access to past seasons with Passport. Search HPM Plus on your smart and connected TVs. It's all waiting for you.
On HPM Plus.
Support comes from Houston Theater Week, a citywide celebration of live performances. Participating organizations include theater, dance, and music presenters. Returning August 24th through the 30th. Tickets at HoustonTheaterWeek.com.
Support comes from the 2026-2027 Imprint Brown Reading Series. Launching the season with fiction writers Andrea Baiani and Claire Vay Watkins, sharing their novels The Anniversary and Yellow Pine. Monday, August 24th. More at imprint.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now Ernie Manous and Tessa Barrera.
As Texas heads towards the midterm elections, questions about voting access are once again in focus, including access to mail-in voting and recent developments involving voting maps and polling locations across the state. Joining us is a good friend of our show, Jen Rice, who reports on threats to democracy in states across the country for Democracy Docket. She's been following voting issues in Texas, including a dispute over voting maps in Galveston County and a proposal in Tarrant County that would have significantly reduced the number of local polling locations. Jen, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, should I be concerned? Should I be worked up about this?
Yes, you should definitely be worked up. I invite you to activate all of your concern as much as you wish.
So, for folks that are coming late to this tale, what are we concerned about?
Well, there's so many things I'm concerned about. We can talk about Galveston County. We can talk about Tarrant County. We can talk about mail ballots. We can talk about redistricting. We can talk about what might happen if certain candidates win in November and other ones don't. We can talk all day.
Let me start with mail-in voting. And the reason I want to start at mail-in voting is there's been so much talk about it. I think people are really confused where we even are currently with it, what's going on with the post offices, what the Postmaster General is or isn't doing, who qualifies, when they have to be received. There's so much going on about that. But the irony in it all, if I am not mistaken, is yesterday was a primary in Florida, and the President of the United States voted with a mail-in ballot.
That's absolutely true. And he could not be more clear, repeatedly saying that, mail voting can't be trusted, and constantly, putting doubt on the process and really, I think, discouraging voters from using mail voting when, yes, as you just said, he literally voted by mail this week in the Florida primary.
Okay, we've got actual general election, midterm elections coming up. What can or can't we do, or should we or shouldn't we know about mail-in voting as Harris County, Houston, and Texas voters?
So the big legal saga that's sort of hovering over the whole country is an executive order that Trump signed back in March, and there have been multiple lawsuits trying to block it. And one key thing to know is it is blocked right now. It is not in effect. But
what
the
was
issue
the executive order? What did he say?
So the executive order instructs the federal government to make lists of all citizens, and then it instructs states to make lists of all of their eligible voters who have requested mail ballots. And then it orders the Postal Service not to deliver ballots from voters who aren't on those lists. And I just want to say in the strongest possible terms that this executive order just completely violates the U.S. Constitution, which gives states and Congress the power to regulate elections. It does not give that power to the president. And this executive order just completely flies in the face of that on its face. It's just very simple.
And you said it has been blocked, and the grounds for which they blocked it was what you just said, or were there other things the judge cited?
Yes, just that the president exceeded his authority, but the thing we're waiting on right now, and could come at absolutely any time, and the White House is, of course, urging the Supreme Court, which now has this matter, to act very quickly, and that could really come at any time. The U.S. Supreme Court could say, actually, we're lifting the injunction and the order is in effect. However, I would caution, and we never know what to expect from the Supreme Court. Anything could happen for real. They sometimes just completely contradict themselves. But if they do lift the injunction, it would be literal chaos. For the normal voter, it seems like elections are still pretty far away. But if you're an election official, you're on timelines. Like, you have timelines for your timelines. Your lists have lists. Mm-hmm. Like, every single state has all of their legal deadlines. And for them, the election is basically tomorrow. And the idea that they would need to suddenly be doing all of these huge processes with the federal government, with lists and citizenship, and the Postal Service has never been in a position to be in charge of who gets ballots or not. So this is all, the idea of implementing that at the last minute would be deeply shocking.
A side wrinkle in all of this, and correct me if I'm wrong here, did we not as a state turn over our voting poll or our voting registration to the government, or our voting laws,
Yes.
whatever you call it?
Yes. So the federal government has requested / demanded the voter rolls from states all across the country. Most red states complied to various degrees. Texas handed over the voter rolls. This is not just your address. This is also like part of your social security number, your date of birth. So it's somewhat private data. Texas did hand it all over. That's true.
And does it also indicate how you voted in primaries, or is that not on it?
That is a good question. I am not sure if that was included in what was handed over.
Okay.
Just your social. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, just part of your social.
Okay. We're speaking with Jen Rice, who reports on threats to democracy in states across the country for Democracy Docket. Okay, Jen, how is the legal back and forth affecting the voter? I mean, we know now we got to thank our local volunteers because it's kind of sending them in a tizzy. But how does it affect the actual voter behavior when they're not sure what bill has passed or what legislation has passed come time to actually go to the poll or receive their mail-in ballot?
I think that it's impossible to overstate how confusing voting is sometimes, especially if this isn't your whole job, especially if you don't do this for a living, just worrying about voting like I do. I think that for the average person, right before the election, they're trying to figure out, wait, what's on the ballot? And what's the difference between the candidates? And to put a lot of responsibility on voters to figure out what are my options for voting, and to have tons of rules on whether your mail ballot will be rejected or not, sign here, this envelope, this other envelope, and all these technicalities on how it can be rejected. It's like, yes, actually, of course, security is super important. We only want eligible voters voting. That is crucial to democracy and having, elections that reflect the will of voters. But at the same time, there's a trade-off. And every time you add more rules or you just promote sort of an unfounded idea that the elections are insecure, you're just really worrying people and adding a burden on people where it often doesn't need to be there.
I want to go back for a second to the voter rolls, and you mentioned it. And I think a lot of people sit there and think, well, what does it matter if the federal government, if the state has it or your local jurisdictions have it? What does it matter if the federal government knows who's voting or not? Why should that be of concern?
Well, I'm definitely someone who very much values privacy. I think that privacy is really important. And I do think historically the United States has sort of had a value that people's privacy is important, and that we actually don't really have a country where they kind of centralize all data into like one database where everyone's information is held, and then outside companies have access to the information. Like this, just sort of historically the culture in the United States has been sort of agencies will have our information on a need to know basis, and we're not trying to have like one master database where the government knows everything about you. And I do think downstream of that, particularly as there's this obsession now with citizens and non-citizens, it's creating more uncertainty for people where they're like, how much information does everyone need to know about everybody?
So as we sit here today, mail by vote, voting by mail, I'll get it right, is as it has been because of the stay right now. Now that might change, but right now people can be assured if you vote by mail, this is how it works. It's the way it's always worked.
Yes, but I will say this is an issue. This is just one of the things that's really important to me just to stress is you have to get your mail ballot in by election day in Texas. The rules are different in every state. It is so important. If you do not think that your mail ballot is going to arrive by election day, you need to go drop it off in person. Like if you mail it the day before the election, your vote's not counting. It's not. Like I can't say that factually, but like I would tell a friend, like, you need to mail your ballot at least a week beforehand. That's what I would tell a friend. And anything after that, you have to assume your ballot's not going to count. And every county in Texas has one place where you can do a drop-off in person, which is usually NRG in Harris.
And we also heard, and I'm, again, not sure where we landed on all of this, as far as we go in Texas, it has to be received by election day, or have they said it can be received up to 7 days as long as it's postmarked by election day? Where are we in this state right now?
Exactly. And that's another thing that just adds to confusion. It shouldn't, like, these rules don't need to be changing all the time so that people are not sure. Like it's kind of silly that like people, for good reason, don't know the answer to that question. But that's another thing, state by state, it's different everywhere. Like some states say you've got 3 weeks, you've got a week, you've got 5 days. In Texas right now, it's basically you have till end of day, I think the day after election day. But let's pretend that's not the case.
As long as it's postmarked.
As if it's postmarked by election day, it could arrive the next day and they'll still count it. But like, we're not counting on that, friends.
Yeah. Okay, another thing that's been confusing is what actual ID do you need to vote? Has that changed yet? I know there's a lot of proposals out there.
No, there has not been a change to that in Texas. There were during the latest legislative session, there was a lot of conversation about proof of citizenship that did not pass in Texas. And so I'm sure it will come up again next year when the legislature meets. But for now, there's been no change to voter ID. I can, however, go into some detail about an interesting case in South Carolina. I don't know if anyone wants to hear about this, but
please.
We like interesting cases.
We want to know the trends, the underreported things. Tell us about it.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. So I found this really interesting as a Texan myself. I mean, not currently, but as a, I consider myself Texan still. But so South Carolina just had a really interesting ruling this week that could change Texas mail voting in the future. The rule in Texas right now is that if you're over 65, you're entitled to a mail ballot. But if you're younger than 65, you need to have some sort of excuse that qualifies in order to get a mail ballot, an absentee ballot. And in South Carolina, the federal courts just struck down South Carolina's version of that and said that's actually not legal. They considered it basically age discrimination. And they said, people under 65 can't have different rules than over 65. And I just find that really interesting because that's the law in Texas. And so if this case does get appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, this is going to be a conversation about what will this do for Texas too.
That is so interesting. Everyone needs a friend like Jen Rice. Okay, we're talking to Jen Rice from Democracy Docket. It's so important because I know there's a subset of Americans that maybe have fatigue or think the system is rigged, but this is, major implications happening. We do have a listener from our YouTube. Lakeisha Lewis, 6707 says, "Hi all, my mom is in a nursing home and it's hard to transport her. What is the best way for her to vote?"
And I'm guessing the best way for that would be mail-in, correct?
Can you answer that for us, Jen?
If she's in a nursing home, I'm assuming she's over 65, and so therefore she's currently eligible to vote by mail. But again, as what Jen was just saying, have her vote early, get it in the mail at least a week ahead of time, and you can also follow your vote by mail. There's ways to follow where your ballot is, too, to make sure it was received, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And if some procrastination should occur, you're gonna drop that. You're gonna have to drop that off in person because we're not in this family. We're not taking the risk that the ballots get arrive too late.
We've talked a lot about mail-in vote. I'm just curious from all the research and the folks you do at Democracy Docket. They talk about the reason that there's this attack or this concern over mail-in voting is because of all the fraud that comes from it. What has research, reporting, investigating into mail-in voting actually proven?
I think certainly that there are, one-off cases, one time here, one case here, that certainly, you can find. But I'm aware of no evidence anywhere in the entire country where any sort of fraud is actually impacting the results of any elections. And at the end of the day, that's the key question you have is is it impacting who's actually winning the race? That's at the end of the day, the big question. Everybody would love to have only perfectly eligible voters on the rolls and only everyone eligible is the only one voting. That's ideal. And we should always be working toward that. But at the end of the day, the main question is just if there are some issues, some human error, someone votes, they thought they were eligible and they're not, is it actually affecting the results or not? And, these things go to court and there are election challenges and they have their day on court to prove and to investigate. And, it's extremely rare to have a situation where an outcome is affected.
I want to shift to a different topic right now, one that was hot in the past, and we've got to realize that it's coming to fruition now, and that was all the redistricting and the representation battles and who was where and who's voting how and what went through and what didn't. Thoughts on where we're at with redistricting? We're going to see that in the voting we do now in the Texas maps. Across the nation, we heard about all these battles about how they were going to shift the power because Republicans were pushing for more Republican voices so they would carry the House. Democrats then were countering it. Where does it all sit now? Who has the advantage?
I cannot stress enough how transformative the past year has been in terms of redistricting. The entire legal landscape of, people saying this map is unfair and going to the courts, all of that has been completely changed over the past year. It's just unrecognizable, just a completely different situation. One of the key things that happened was you had the president literally going to states, starting with Texas, and saying, hey, I know there's not new data or anything, but we just want you to redraw the maps anyway to help give my party an advantage so we can hold on to Congress in the next election. There's not a precedent for a president just asking states to suddenly redraw their maps. And some states didn't take the bait, like in Indiana, which is also a Republican-controlled state, those lawmakers, the majority of them said no. They were like, you're not the boss of Indiana, we're actually not going to do it. And they've faced consequences for that, but they said no. And then the second key thing that happened was there was a major U.S. Supreme Court ruling that just happened in April, and it just like flipped things upside down in terms of it just opened the door wide open for racial gerrymandering, which is something that I think if you ask pretty much any voter in America, that is not popular. Like the gerrymandering is unpopular with both parties, all voters, like partisan gerrymandering and racial gerrymandering. The voters do not want that. Every poll you can possibly find says that. And so the fact that now the U.S. Supreme Court majority has said, all racial gerrymandering pretty much, there's still some carve-outs, I guess, theoretically, to block a map, but so far they basically had an immediate test of that, and in Alabama, and the court allowed them to use a map that had already been found intentionally discriminatory. So
when you look at the scoreboard, though, at this point, I don't know if you have this or not, who perceived has won? Are there more Republican seats that were drawn? Did Democrats meet them on the playing field and get even? But Republicans got the advantage in that game, right?
Yes, Republicans got the advantage. They had multiple states change their maps. At the end of the day, only California is a state where Democrats picked up seats through redistricting, and they have up to 5 seats, which Texas alone has up to 5 Republican seats. So that alone is kind of a matchup. And then, Republicans also did Florida, North Carolina, Missouri. They kind of went around the country. But, it's still up to the voters at the end of the day. Just because a district has been drawn a certain way, the voters do have the final say, and nobody knows what's going to happen in these districts in November.
The voters have the final say. I like that. Jen Rice reports on the threats to democracy in states across the country for Democracy Docket. Jen, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston. Coming up, how a local restaurateur is working to honor the legacy of Houston artist John Biggers. It's going to be an art conversation, Ernie. Woo-hoo! Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Fresh air. Why has the United States been unable to impose its will on Iran, despite months of punishing attacks from the world's most powerful military force? We'll get some insights from Stacey Pettyjohn, Director of the Defense Program at the Center for a New American Security. Join us.
Listen to Fresh Air. It's on tonight at 8 p.m.
Support comes from Common Spirit, the new home of St. Luke's Health in Greater Houston, where the nation's first successful heart transplant was performed in 1968. St. Luke's Health is becoming Common Spirit. More at stlukeshealth.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Alley Theater, celebrating its 80th year with a season honoring 8 decades of live theater, storytelling, and artistic innovation. Season information at alleytheater.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Audie International School, where students from PK3 to 12th grade grow in curiosity and courage, preparing them to make their mark on the world. The future's so bright at Audie. More at audie.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Central Market's weekday meals, with on-the-go breakfasts, oven-roasted sandwich meats, plus chef-prepared, ready-to-eat sides for dinner. More at centralmarket.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now Ernie Manous and Tessa Barrera.
A new Public Art Project in Houston is bringing together local artists, community members, and a piece of the city's history. Chef Chris Williams, owner of Lucille's, is working with Street Art for Mankind on a mural inspired by the legacy of renowned Houston artist John Biggers. The mural, which is planned for a parking structure in the museum district, will celebrate Houston's history, diversity, and community, with a public unveiling expected this fall. Joining us to share more details about the project is Chef Chris Williams, owner of Lucille's. Chris, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thanks for having me. Good afternoon.
I guess to start with, for folks who aren't familiar with John Biggers, tell them a little bit about him and why he's so important.
Well, I'm no historian, but I can tell you that he is one of the most prominent artistic talents from Houston. Baked into TSU. TSU right now has an active exhibit showcasing all of his work. His work is still being discovered around the city. Like, he was everywhere. And this mural is not only John Biggers. The idea was to make it inclusive and what's the best way to put it? Like a showcase of what Houston is. So I wanted to do it in the style of John Biggers and Diego Rivera. So Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo's husband, was at one point. I got a lot of this history from Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who's responsible for changing, the way downtown looks and feels, which we love. But Diego Rivera was not only a mentor to John Biggers, but then they were contemporaries and did a lot of work together. And you could see in John Biggers' earlier work a lot of that influence from Diego Rivera. So I thought, what better way to celebrate the 250th anniversary of this country than to do a public art piece over the Children's Museum, the largest one in the country, that sees on its peak days 8,000 children a day. Mm-hmm. For them to see themselves. And we came up with a piece that was meant to be equitable and inclusive and reflective of the diversity of the city.
And why is it important, do you think, and I know this is kind of a layup question for you, but to have public art of this kind?
Well, I just think that it's important for you to see yourself as many places as possible, to see what's possible for you. Mm-hmm. In a lot of places, a bunch of neighborhoods can be silos and you only see one thing. And if you can only see yourself in one light, then it kind of limits the way that you can see the rest of your life. I think that art's a powerful, moving thing, and the more that we could showcase it any and everywhere, like, it doesn't cost people anything, but it can change everything about the way you see the world. So wherever we can put it up, I'm just a fan of it. And then working with Street Art for Mankind and Thibaut Decker, like, that dude's a madman. He's brilliant. He's doing this all over the world. And so looking at Commissioner Ellis's vision for how he's done downtown and just how that changes the feel of it, to see all races, all colors, all styles of artists up on these buildings, it's a powerful thing. And so I'm kind of following his lead.
So you met Thibaut at an event, and I mean, how did this all come about? How did the collaboration happen? Besides, hey, do you want to build a mural? Would you like to?
Yeah, so I met Thibaut years ago when he came to our mothership restaurant, Lucille's. But this idea really came about with the new building that we're setting up operations in, the Forum building, which is a 33-story high-rise directly across the street from Lucille's. And it was a 5-year project for them, the development, which was awful for everybody in the neighborhood, and especially me, given that I'm right across the street. There went my parking. There came the gas leaks, the water main breaks, all this kind of stuff. Hurricanes blowing their construction debris on top of my building. Like, it was a nightmare, and I wasn't a fan of it until I saw the space. And the space is incredible. It has the largest residential gym in the country. The heart of the building, the 12th floor, which we occupy, and our operations are based on, they have 2 pools out there. One's a huge jacuzzi, one's a wading pool, which is overlooking Miller Outdoor Theater. And nobody knows about this. Like, it's crazy, right? And so I was like, how do we activate this and change the neighborhood's feel about this building? Because we all hated it. Like, just to be honest, we hated it because it was a nightmare for 5 years. And so looking at it and looking at that wall, because it's 11 stories of parking garage, looking at that, which your producer, he lives in the neighborhood, he's like, yeah, it's hideous. But looking at it, like, it's also a blank canvas. And I was thinking, how can we create something that activates the building and then changes the community sentiment behind it and makes it equitable to where the stakeholders in the community, be it people that live in the neighborhood or people that do business in the neighborhood, could finally have their name on a piece of public art, because typically everything's the same. It's the same players.
Right.
right? But how can we get Mrs. Johnson, who lives 2 blocks away, up on a wall? So I came up with this idea to commemorate the 250th anniversary, do it in the style of these 2 great artists. And then we added a Declaration of Independence piece to the mural, which is the document of the Declaration of Independence, but it'll have the signatures of the people that have made a contribution to the mural living on that wall as long as the paint lives. So you'll have everybody up in there from Miss Johnson to my mother and my dad that want to have their name up on it. To
the real community.
The actual
real
community. Yeah, will be up on there. So we wanted to make it equitable.
We're speaking with Chef Chris Williams, owner of Lucille's. If you'd like to get in on the conversation, you can call or text 713-440-8870. We have a caller from West Houston, Harvey L. Johnson. What you got?
Yes, I am Harvey L. Johnson, and John Biggers was my surrogate father. I worked with John Biggers for 32 years at Texas Southern University as his colleague, as well as a professor of art.
Oh, wow.
We did the mural downtown at the University of Houston downtown called Salt Marsh. And we also did the mural at the Jesse H. Jones School of Business at Texas Southern University called Nubia. And I wanted to, I'm very pleased about the guests that you have and what the city is trying to do in order to bring new light to John Biggers and him not only as an American artist, but also as a master artist alongside Hieronymus Bosch and Van Gogh, etc.
Yeah.
And my statement is, and I've just written it, I want to say something about John's work as a whole for the audience who are not really aware of the particulars concerning the composite abstract of John's work. His work was, it bridged the gap between our African ancestral culture and our African communities throughout entire America. It's a foundation that grew out of, and that grows out of an aesthetic of a people who, and this is a quote, on the study of the laws of nature, founded the laws and the elements of the arts and sciences, and those civil and religious systems which still govern the universe, unquote. His sacred art is called, in our African vernacular, Medu Neter, which means the language of God. It is deeply grounded in African spirituals, gospels, blues, jazz, dance, and theater, and retains their significance among Africans born in America. The visual spirituality is of cosmic proportions, which is very paramount in John's work. It notes the capacity of the African community in America to ascend above environmental abuse and transform this into positive spirituality and humanity. And I am just proud to say that I'm a witness as well as a colleague and a collaborator with John. And it was a very spiritual conversation.
Well, Harvey, thank you.
Who knew John?
Thank you for calling in and sharing with us today. You're going to have to come and be a guest on the show to talk about him in the future with us. Thank you so much for calling right now. Quickly, before we run out of time, though, I do want to know a little bit more about the organization that you folks run in addition to this, which includes what I'm talking about 1913. And it's not just art, it's community service, it's food access, cultural preservation, all coming together under one umbrella. Can you talk a little bit about what you folks are hoping to accomplish with all that?
Yeah, absolutely. And also thanks to the, oh no, that's awful. Excuse me. Can't hear my own voice. Thank you to the previous caller though for that, that insight, and he needs to be on that wall as well. 1913 is our nonprofit that we started with the pandemic. We started off as a meal service program. We were feeding people from Sunnyside up to Acres Home, down to Kindleton, Texas. And unlike the food bank or Meals on Wheels, our program was based as chefs. We were uniquely positioned to create meals that spoke to the people's palates that we were serving. So we did over 1 million meals, and with huge support from the Kinder Foundation and Seraphim Foundation and a bunch of other people that got behind us. But so we started there. And the whole point was to show dignity through the meals that we created because we were seeing who we were serving first. And then we shifted to growing with the exact same approach to where we grow for people, but we grow for their palates. So we don't waste space in the land growing rutabaga or, kohlrabi for people in Kittleton with 75% African American. We grow to that palate, collards, tomatoes, okra, what have you. And we literally grow to give. So now that's expanded into doing composting to where we're trying to be vertically integrated and reduce our carbon footprint as we do these good works. And this was just another opportunity to, pair one nonprofit with another one. We don't typically do art, even though culinary, one might argue, like myself, that it is a version of art.
It
is
art.
It's
art.
The music is playing us out. I apologize for that.
Okay.
Yes, Chris, thank you so much. Chef Chris Williams is the owner of Lucille's. And thank you for joining us today and for this work. We can't wait to see it. And that brings us to the end of the show. We'll be back tomorrow with more Hello Houston. So we'll see you then right here on News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menivar, Laura Walker, Jed Altide, Todd Holslander, Jayla Rhodes, Mark DeClaudio, Tom Carter, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media.
Support comes from Twin Liquors, a Texas family-owned home for wine and spirits since 1937. With over 100 locations across the state, Twin Liquors is proud to be part of the community. Order